You wake up to the sound of hammering. Not your alarm clock. No, that won't be invented for about 700 more years. Instead, your wake-up call is the unmistakable clang of iron on iron. A rhythmic, metallic thud that tells you two things. First, it's definitely morning. Second, your master is already in the forge, and you're late. Again, the floor beneath your straw-stuffed mattress is dirt, and the mattress itself is, well, calling it a mattress might be overselling it. It's more like a loosely organized collection of moldy excuses, held together by a few chicken feathers and some mutual suffering. The scent? A pungent blend of sweat, damp wool, and the undeniable aroma of last week's stew still lingering in the air. You share this sleeping space with your siblings, 3 chickens, and a half-blind cat who may or may not be immortal. You sit up. Your tunic, your only tunic, is already halfway stuck to your back with sweat. It doesn't matter that the sun is barely cresting the thatched rooftops outside. The forge waits for no one, and neither does the master blacksmith. And he's got a temper hotter than the forge fire, especially when his apprentice decides to sleep in. So before you settle in for this guided medieval experience, maybe take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy drifting off to deeply unfortunate historical scenarios narrated by someone who reads too many medieval tax rolls for fun. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it for you? I always enjoy seeing who's tuning in to this insomnia-fueled journey through the ages. Now, back to your miserable little 14th century morning. You don't brush your teeth. Not because you forgot, but because toothbrushes don't exist. At best, you might gnaw on a hazel twig or swirl your mouth with a bit of stale ale. And yes, your breath smells like a compost bin that someone wept into. You reach for your belt, leather, cracked, and made from an unfortunate goat who didn't survive last winter, and cinch it tight over your tunic. Then it's off to the forge. The forge, you see, is your workplace, your life, your destiny. Or at least until you either save enough to buy your freedom, you won't, inherit the business, you won't, or die of tetanus, statistically, highly likely. As you step outside, your village is already stirring. The air is heavy with smoke from peat fires, and the muddy street is less of a street and more of a long, squishy accident waiting to happen. Chickens dart underfoot. A local pig eyes you with suspicion. You nod respectfully at it, as one does. Your forge is a squat, timber-frame building with a chimney that looks like it's one strong wind away from retirement. The moment you open the wooden door, heat smacks you in the face like an angry spirit. The fire's already roaring, and your master is mid-swing, shaping a glowing piece of iron like he's in a one-sided boxing match. He doesn't stop to look at you. He doesn't need to. He knows you're late. You're late, he growls anyway. You mumble an apology and hurry to your station, by which I mean a cracked anvil, a worn set of tongs, and a bucket of questionable water that's meant for quenching, but occasionally gets mistaken for washing hands. Spoiler, don't wash your hands in it. You did once. It didn't end well. The day's task? Horseshoes. Again. You've made roughly 2,000 of them already, and you're getting faster, sure, but speed doesn't mean perfection. And perfection is what your master demands. One mistake, and he'll chuck it into the pile of useless metal garbage, which is also where most of your dreams end up. You hammer. The noise is deafening. You could scream and no one would hear you. Not that screaming would help. That's just life in the forge. The sweat pours down your back. Your hands blister. Your fingers are black with soot before the church bell even chimes 8. You might be wondering, why blacksmithing? Why not become, say, a baker or a merchant, or one of those monks who spends all day drawing fancy letters? Excellent question. Unfortunately, this isn't a Netflix original where you get to choose your class like a medieval RPG. Your father was a blacksmith, and his father before him. So unless you want to end up as a pig herder, or worse, a traveling minstrel, this is your lot in life. Also, let's address a myth while we're here. Blacksmiths are often portrayed in modern media as these jacked, soot-covered hunks with flowing hair and muscles sculpted by the gods. Reality check? You are definitely soot-covered, but the only thing flowing is the river of sweat between your shoulder blades. Your hair is a tangled mess, your arms ache constantly, and you're more likely to pull a muscle sneezing than lifting iron. You are not attractive. You are a walking pile of burns, bruises, and passive aggression. The forge smells like scorched wool, smoke, and the metallic tang of iron. Occasionally, the breeze brings in the faint scent of manure, reminding you that no matter how hot your forge is, the rest of the village is still knee-deep in animal droppings. Lunchtime arrives, signaled not by a break in the work, but by the sound of your master briefly stopping to eat a hunk of bread the consistency of wood. You join him with your own meal, barley mush with the occasional weevil. You pretend not to notice the weevil. Protein is protein. There's no avocado toast. Just barley mush and bad decisions. You lean against the forge wall and chew in silence, your jaw aching from the toughness of the bread. Across the street, the village cooper is yelling at his apprentice for breaking a barrel. The cooper's apprentice looks exactly like you, young, overworked, and deeply regretful of every choice that led to this moment. You nod at him. He nods back. Brotherhood in suffering. After lunch, the real work begins. You're tasked with making nails. Hundreds of them. Over and over. One small rod of iron after another. Heat it, draw it out, cut, taper, and flatten the head with precise hammer strokes. Too many strikes and you ruin it. Too few, and the head won't hold. It is, quite literally, the most mind-numbing task imaginable, and yes, you do this for hours. Congratulations. But don't worry. You get to break things up by also sweeping the floor with a broom made from twigs and shame. And let's not forget the bellows, massive, wooden lungs you operate to keep the fire roaring hot enough to melt metal and possibly your will to live. You burn yourself. Again. On the same spot on your forearm as last week. You hiss through your teeth and dunk your arm in the questionable water bucket. It doesn't help. Your master yells at you for being clumsy. You say nothing. You haven't said anything all day except yes, master, and I'm sorry. Words are a luxury. You've got iron to shape and blisters to earn. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting a golden glow over the village, picturesque if you ignore the stench, you begin the end-of-day tasks. Tools are returned to their places. The forge fire is tamped down, not extinguished. It'll be lit again tomorrow, before dawn. And the next day. And the next. You're dismissed with a grunt. No thank you, no good job. Just a nod that means you didn't screw up enough to get yelled at. So, good for you. You trudge back home, feet aching, tunic clinging to your back with sweat and regret. Your mother greets you with a weak smile and a bowl of turnip stew. You eat in silence. Your fingers still twitch like they're holding tongs. The forge is in your bones now. You could probably hammer a nail in your sleep. You go to bed with soot under your nails, soot in your hair, and a growing sense that this is all there is. No weekend. No vacations. Just heat, iron, and the soft whisper of the bellows echoing in your dreams. But before you drift off, here's a fun fact. Blacksmiths in the Middle Ages were considered vital to society, even borderline mystical. People thought you had the power to trap demons in iron or craft magical blades. But despite that, you'll never be rich. Never be famous. You'll die of a lung infection or tetanus or maybe in your sleep, if you're lucky. But hey, at least you made a good horseshoe. You wake up again. Because, somehow, the universe didn't get the memo that you barely survived yesterday. The mattress is no more forgiving than it was the night before. Your back cracks in 17 different places as you sit up, each pop echoing like a tiny funeral bell for your spinal cord. The sun isn't even up yet. That's right, today, you're up before dawn. Why? Because today is market day and your master needs inventory. And when he says needs, what he really means is you're going to work until your arms feel like overcooked noodles. The forge is darker than usual when you get there, and colder. You fumble with flint and steel to light the hearth. Sparks fly, mostly onto your hand. You flinch, say some medieval swear words, which are mostly just biblical names used with tone, and try again. The fire catches. A soft glow builds from the coals, revealing the forge's dusty corners. It's weirdly peaceful, in that I'm completely alone with a large amount of flammable material and no formal safety training kind of way. The air is thick, even this early. Not with humidity. No, that would imply water in the air. This is soot. Floating, omnipresent soot. It's in your nose, your ears, your very soul. At this point, you are part carbon. Your job today? Knives. Lots and lots of knives. Not the fun kind with fancy handles or dramatic flourishes. These are utility blades, used for gutting fish, cutting rope, Or if you're lucky, mildly intimidating a neighbor during a boundary dispute over who owns which sheep. The work is repetitive, sure. But the real challenge is consistency. You have to forge each one to nearly identical specifications. Which is fun, because your measuring tools are eyeballs. That's it. Your eyes and maybe a mark stick if you're lucky. You grip the tongs with one hand and the hammer with the other, and the dance begins. Heat the billet until it's cherry red, then shape the edge, then flatten, then file, then cool. Then repeat. Again, and again, and again. Somewhere around knife number 17, you wonder if this is what eternity feels like. Let's talk about the tools for a moment. Your hammer isn't balanced. The handle has a splinter that you keep forgetting to sand down, and it bites you with every swing. Your anvil is cracked, probably from your master dropping something massive on it back in the year 1320. It makes a tinny ring when struck, like it's slowly losing the will to live alongside you. And your apron? It's made of thick leather, yes, but it's also held together with hope and the occasional crude stitch you added after catching it on fire last summer. Still, it protects you from most of the sparks. Not all. Just most. The rest of the sparks live in your eyebrows now. Around mid-morning, your master arrives. He surveys your progress, grunts approvingly at knife number 5, grunts less approvingly at knife number 9, and completely ignores knife number 12, which is probably for the best because it looks like you made it with your eyes closed during a seizure. You don't defend yourself. There's no point. The apprentice's motto is simple: survive now, cry later. So how's the medieval economy treating you? Excellent question. You're not paid in coin, not yet. As an apprentice, your payment is room, board, and the privilege of being screamed at by a man who once beat a baron in an arm wrestling match. If you're lucky, you might get a copper groat or two at the end of the year, but don't hold your breath. Coin is for masters and merchants. You're still in the sweat and blisters tax bracket. At noon, it's time to deliver the knives to the market stall. Which means, lucky you, you get to carry a wooden crate filled with roughly 30 pounds of sharpened metal through a crowded, muddy village street. The crate digs into your palms. One of the knives shifts and nicks your wrist. You taste blood, but you don't stop. Because nothing says I'm a dedicated apprentice like bleeding into the inventory. The market is already bustling. Stalls hawk everything from fish to wool to suspicious-looking pastries. There's shouting, bartering, the occasional goat scream. Children run underfoot like tiny, muddy missiles. A man selling eels shouts something about slippery miracles. You try not to make eye contact. You set up your master's stall with the grace of someone who definitely did not sleep and whose arms are currently vibrating from prolonged iron exposure. You lay out the knives in neat rows on a wooden plank. Your master shows up 10 minutes later, already drinking something from a cracked clay jug that smells like regret and fermented apples. He takes over the selling, while you stand by silently like a mildly threatening statue. Occasionally someone asks you a question. Is this blade good for skinning? Can I use this to cut through a boot? What happens if I stab my brother with this? You nod politely. Yes, you say, to all of them. Because the answer is always yes if the blade is sharp enough. While your master haggles, you do what every apprentice does during downtime. You worry. You worry about whether you'll ever become a journeyman. You worry that your calluses are growing faster than your skill. You worry about the black spot on your shin that might be rot or might be a very persistent smudge. Either way, you're not showing anyone. Eventually, the market wraps up. You help pack the remaining knives and carry the crate back to the forge. Your arms are dead. Your legs are sludge. Your back has gone on strike. But you don't stop, because the fire never does. Back at the forge, there's cleanup to do. Always. Ash to sweep. Slag to dispose of. Tools to oil. Your master finally lets you eat something, a meat pie that tastes suspiciously like it contains no meat. But it's warm, and it's not barley, so you savor every suspicious bite. Night falls. The fire dims. You sit by the embers, warming your cracked hands, watching as the coals shift and breathe like sleeping dragons. The forge feels different at night, quieter, almost alive. Like it's judging you softly for not knowing how to make a perfect hinge yet. Your master, in a rare moment of generosity, or maybe indigestion, hands you a small blade. Fix this tomorrow, he says. It's bent, slightly warped, a little sad-looking. much like you. You nod, hold the knife in your hands like it's sacred. Because it is. Every mistake is a lesson. Every lesson gets you one swing closer to competence. Then it's home. Back to your mattress of straw and sorrow. You lie down, fingers twitching from muscle memory. You think about the fire, about the knives, about the blister on your heel the size of a pigeon egg. And as you finally start to drift off, your last thought is, tomorrow, it's horseshoes again. You wake up before the rooster crows. Again. Not because you're particularly motivated or have achieved some monastic level of self-discipline, but because the rooster lives directly above your bed in the rafters and he's a sadist with wings. He screams into your soul just before dawn, which you guess is his personal form of revenge for existing. Your back feels like it was forged on your own anvil. Every vertebra protests in sequence as you sit up. You slept in your tunic, again, not because it's efficient, but because it's cold and you'd rather smell like 3-day-old turnips than freeze your toes off. You don't have socks. You've never had socks. You're not even sure socks are a real thing or just something the nobility made up to torment peasants. You swing your legs over the side of your mattress, brushing away a few mouse droppings with a casual flick. One of the chickens pecks at your foot. You don't even flinch. This is your life now. By the time you make it to the forge, the master is already working. He's been up since the stars were out, pounding iron like it personally offended him. His beard is singed at the ends, again, and you can already smell the tangy aroma of heated metal, sweat, and slightly burnt onions from his breakfast. No greeting, just a gesture toward the hearth. Stoke it, he mutters. So you do. You grab the bellows handles, already slick from soot and use, and begin the ancient, painful task of making the fire angry. It takes rhythm, stamina, and a tolerance for inhaling things that are definitely not medically advisable. Your arms ache, but your brain zones out. This part of the day is almost peaceful, in a physically agonizing way. Today's job? Horseshoes. Again. Because it turns out horses are not exactly considerate of ironwork. They go through shoes like toddlers go through juice boxes. And farmers are very vocal when Dobbin shows up limping because your last shoe was a few degrees off. So you're making more, dozens more. Until your hands forget what it feels like not to grip tongs. You start with a thick bar of iron, cutting it into 4-inch sections with a chisel and hammer. Each one, a chunk of potential misery. Into the fire it goes. Wait, turn it. Again. No, you left it too long. It's too hot. Now it's crumbling on the edges, like burnt toast. You pull it anyway. Your master watches, eagle-eyed, silently judging, like a disappointed father who didn't want kids but got stuck with you and a mortgage made of iron filings. You hammer. The noise is deafening. You shape the curve of the shoe around a round iron form called a swage, which sounds fancy, but is really just another heavy thing you hit stuff with. The shoe has to be perfectly shaped to fit the horse's hoof, which you do not have in front of you, because this is not an artisanal boutique. It's a forge in the middle of a muddy, plague-adjacent village. Let's talk smells. The forge has its own bouquet. Today's notes are smoldering despair, scorched goat hair. And was that your skin? Every few minutes, a spark lands somewhere inappropriate, on your forearm, in your boot, or down your collar. You no longer scream. You just sigh, brush it away, and add the scar to the collection. You try to scratch your cheek, but your hands are so filthy that you end up smearing a layer of soot across your face like war paint. No one notices. Everyone in this village looks like they lost a fight with a chimney. A passing cooper once mistook you for a chimney. By midday, your hands have cramped into claw shapes. You haven't blinked in 20 minutes. Your apron is now half burned at the hem, and your sleeves are doing something that OSHA would definitely not approve of if OSHA existed. Which it doesn't. You're one splinter away from infection and a 14th century funeral, which, spoiler, involves way less ceremony and way more shoveling. Your lunch is handed to you, in a rag. Bread, again. Possibly rye. Possibly not bread at all. It's chewy, it's cold, and there's a good chance it's been repurposed from yesterday's leftovers. Still, you eat it with reverence. You eat it like it's the last meal before your trial, which in a way, it is. Your master grunts approvingly at shoe number 7. That's a win. You ride the high for a full 30 seconds before shoe number 8 bends wrong, and he throws it into the reject pile without a word. That's how he communicates, with grunts and projectile iron. In the afternoon, you get a break from horseshoes. Instead, you're repairing farm tools, sickles, plowshares, and a scythe that looks like it's been through a war. Possibly a literal war. You remove rust with a rasp, then reheat the metal to reshape it. It's slower work, more detail-oriented, and a refreshing change from hammering horseshoes like you're trying to warn an army with Morse code. A local farmer comes in around 3 with a broken pitchfork. He's missing 3 teeth and has straw in his beard. He nods at you. You nod back. No words exchanged, because neither of you trust the other enough to form a sentence. You take the fork, examine the bend, and hammer it back into something vaguely symmetrical. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just functional. Kind of like you. The farmer pays with a boiled egg and a copper coin. You don't get the coin. By evening, your arms are spaghetti. Your eyes sting from the smoke. Your back is locked in a shape that would make a chiropractor cry. But the forge doesn't care. It never does. The fire still glows. The tools are still hot. The master still looms. You sweep. Always sweeping. The floor is never clean, because the forge eats clean floors and spits out ash. But sweeping is part of the rhythm now. You sweep with the gentle despair of someone who knows it will never matter, but does it anyway. Like voting or medieval dental care. As the sun finally disappears and the forge dims to a dull glow, you pack up the tools, wipe your forehead with your sleeve, and nod to your master. He doesn't nod back. You didn't mess up today. That's enough. You walk home in the dark, stars overhead, mud underfoot, aches in places you didn't know existed. You dodge a puddle that's deeper than it looks and wave to a neighbor you're 60% sure is a witch, but she makes excellent cheese, so you leave it alone. Your family is eating dinner when you arrive, turnip stew, because what else? You eat in silence, staring into the bowl like it holds answers. It doesn't. Just more turnip. You lie down again on your mattress, curled into the shape of someone who's been slowly crushed by a blacksmithing apprenticeship and the existential weight of knowing you'll probably never leave this village. And just before you fall asleep, you remember, tomorrow is cartwheel brackets. You wake up in darkness. Not metaphorical darkness, not the darkness of man's inhumanity to man or any philosophical brooding. Literal, pitch-black darkness. You can't see your own fingers. You're not even sure you still have fingers, honestly, because your hands are numb and vaguely claw-shaped from yesterday's endless side repairs and horseshoe forging. Your back has officially signed a resignation letter. Your knees crack like dried sticks every time you shift. And your blanket smells faintly of goat. You don't have a goat. No one in your house has a goat. Which raises questions you're not prepared to answer. Anyway, it's another day. Lucky you. You peel yourself out of bed like a damp scroll, shuffling into your boots which are still wet from last night's mud. They never dry. They've reached a state of permanent moist. They are now more sponge than shoe. Your tunic is stiff with soot, but you put it on anyway. Fashion isn't a concept here. If it doesn't smell too strongly of mildew or plague, you wear it. That's the rule. You step outside. It's cold, because of course it is. The fog rolls in over the fields like it knows something you don't. You start walking. The sky is the color of regret. And just before the horizon bleeds into gold, you smell it, that warm, sharp scent of coal and iron, and, oh no, the forge has already been lit and I'm late. You jog the last few steps to the forge, slipping once in the mud and nearly eating centuries-old manure. You recover, your pride slightly dented, and find your master already there, poking at the fire with a stick like it owes him money. Today is bracket day. Cartwheel brackets, to be exact. Not glamorous. Not sexy. Not remotely interesting. But vital. Without them, carts collapse, wheels fall off, and peasants scream. Which means your job today is to create dozens of tiny iron pieces that attach the wheel to the axle. This sounds simple. It's not. Each bracket must be shaped to match the curvature of the wheel it's supporting. But you don't have that wheel in front of you. You have vibes. And a wooden form that's definitely warped. You sigh and begin anyway, because questioning your task is not part of your job description. Your job description is make things and don't die. You pull iron bars from the stockpile, short lengths of square rod, heavy and cold and probably haunted. You shove one into the coals and pump the bellows like your life depends on it, which it kinda does. You wait until the iron glows red-orange like the world's angriest fruit, and then yank it out with your tongs and slap it onto the anvil. And then it's hammer time. Again. Tap, tap, flatten, bend, reheat, curse, tap harder. Forget which end was supposed to curve. Start over. Each bracket takes maybe 5 minutes to shape. But that's assuming your forge temperature is consistent, your anvil is clean, your tools are sharp, and your brain hasn't liquefied from inhaling carbon monoxide for 6 hours a day. Since none of those things are true, each bracket takes closer to 12 minutes, 2 regrets, and at least 1 minor burn. Around the 4th bracket, your hammer slips and hits the edge of the anvil instead of the iron. The vibration travels up your arm and into your spine, where it takes up residence as a permanent tenant. You shake your hand out, quietly scream into the void, and try again. Your master is working beside you. He's making hinges. His hammer strokes are precise, rhythmic, almost artistic. Yours sound like a blindfolded goblin attacking a saucepan. But he says nothing, which is good. Silence means not terrible. If he speaks, it'll be to insult your ancestors. By mid-morning, your face is smeared with ash, your palms are blistering again, and your apron smells like boiled leather and regret. The forge is hotter now, stifling and dry. Your throat feels like it's been sandpapered. You pause for a moment to sip water from a wooden cup that's definitely been dropped on the floor multiple times. You try not to think about it. You're halfway through your current bracket when a village boy bursts into the forge, panting like he's outrun a bear. Cart broke, he says, gasping. In the South Road. Need help. Your master looks at you. You're going, he says. No debate. You nod, already dreading what's coming. You pack tools, hammer, tongs, a small anvil, which is still horrifyingly heavy, nails, brackets, and pile them into a cart of your own. A handcart, which you must drag. Through mud. Uphill. Because, of course, the South Road is more like a suggestion than a road. It's a glorified trench filled with wheel ruts, puddles, and the occasional goose. You reach the site an hour later, drenched in sweat, arms aching, face already sunburned. The cart in question is indeed broken. One of the wheels has collapsed, the axle has cracked, and the owner is yelling at it like that will somehow fix physics. You examine the bracket, twisted, rusted, absolutely done with life. You nod solemnly, because this is the kind of serious moment blacksmiths train for. Replacing a bracket in the field is harder than it sounds. There's no forge, no real workspace, just a log to prop the cart up on, and gravity actively trying to ruin your career. You brace the wheel, position the new bracket, and hammer the nails in by hand, lying on your back in the mud like a very determined mole. An hour later, the cart is fixed. The owner is thrilled. He gives you a tip, half an apple, which you eat immediately, because you're starving and it's the first fruit you've seen in a month that wasn't rotten. You trudge back to the forge with your tools. You arrive just in time for more bracket work. Because, of course, the afternoon passes in a blur of iron, smoke, and that weird rash on your forearm you've chosen to ignore. You finish the last bracket just as the sun dips below the treetops. Your master inspects your work, grunts something between adequate and barely passable, and hands you a scrap of dried meat. Dinner. You sit by the forge, chewing slowly, staring into the coals. They pulse and shift, glowing like ancient eyes. You think, maybe, just maybe, you're getting better. Or maybe your standards have fallen so low that anything not actively on fire is a victory. Eventually, you stumble home. Your boots squelch. Your spine creaks. You pass a man carrying a pig in a wheelbarrow. No one comments. This is normal. You crawl into bed. Your bones ache like they've been forged themselves. You close your eyes. And just before sleep takes you, you remember tomorrow's job. Nails. Hundreds of nails. You wake up to the dulcet tones of your own joints popping like cheap firecrackers. Your spine makes a noise that's probably illegal in some modern countries. You roll over on your hay-stuffed mattress and instantly regret it. There's a splinter in your hip and something moving under the straw. Possibly a mouse. Possibly not a mouse. You make a mental note to stop thinking about it before panic sets in. It's nail day. You hate nail day. Not because it's physically harder than making brackets or horseshoes. No, those things require complex curves and careful shaping. Nails are just iron sticks with ats. But they're tedious, mind-numbing, the kind of work that makes you question your life choices, the nature of time, and whether any god would truly allow this level of monotony. Still, up you go. You pull on your tunic, still unwashed, still faintly damp, and wiggle into your boots, which now have the structural integrity of old cheese. You scarf down a piece of dry bread and a sad onion, the medieval equivalent of an energy bar, and head for the forge. The sky is gray and heavy with mist, like it also resents nail day. Your master is already at the hearth, naturally. You're not sure if he sleeps or if he just sits in the coals at night like some kind of soot-power goblin. He grunts at you, the universal blacksmith greeting, and gestures to a bucket of iron rods stacked like firewood. These rods are your day. They will become nails. Hundreds of them. Possibly thousands. Why so many? Because every cart, door, chest, and fence in the village needs them. And they bend, rust, break, or go missing constantly. One local drunk uses nails as makeshift ice. Another swears they keep away evil spirits. You don't ask questions anymore. You just make nails. You heat the first rod in the forge, watching the iron go from dull gray to angry orange. It's hot enough now. You pull it out and lay it on the anvil. With your hammer, you flatten one end into a point. Then, you chisel off a short piece, just a few inches. That chunk will be the nail. You take it with your tongs, reheat it for a moment, then gently shape the head, flattening the top with a hammer in a single strike. That's the goal, anyway. Sometimes it takes 3 strikes. Sometimes you miss and send the piece flying across the room, where it clinks somewhere in the ashes, lost forever. Repeat. Again. And again. After the 5th nail, your shoulders start complaining. After the 10th, your hands go numb. After the 50th, time no longer has meaning. You enter what can only be described as a nail fugue state. Your mind floats above your body, watching the sweaty, soot-covered gremlin version of yourself hammer out tiny iron pins like a cursed elf in a sad Christmas factory. Your master walks by and inspects your pile. Too fat, he says of one. Too thin, of another. Acceptable, he grunts finally, and moves on. You cherish that word. It might be the highest praise you ever get. You write it in your mind journal. You do not have a real journal. Paper is a luxury. Your last scrap was used to wrap salted fish. Around mid-morning, the tedium is broken by a surprise visitor, the village carpenter. He strides in, covered in sawdust and ego. I need 200 nails, he says, like it's no big deal. By tomorrow. Your master nods at you. You nod back, dead inside. Back to the forge. You pause only to drink from the wooden ladle hanging by the door. The water tastes like iron, probably because someone once tried to cool a horseshoe in the bucket. You don't care. Hydration is hydration. You've reached the point where your hands know what to do without input. Your thoughts drift. You wonder what the nobles are doing right now. Probably eating goose. Probably not making nails. Probably being fed grapes by clean-handed servants who have never seen a forge, let alone stood in one for 16 hours a day, inhaling coal dust like it's a personality trait. A small child wanders into the forge, barefoot and sticky, and watches you hammer for a while. Is it fun? He asks. You blink slowly. No. He nods and leaves. Smart kid. Lunchtime comes. You sit outside on a stump and eat a bowl of something that might be stew, or might be disappointment. Turnips again. The texture is like regret. You chew it slowly, staring at the sky, wondering if clouds have feelings. You doubt it. Nothing in this world seems to. You go back to nails. You start naming them, because your sanity has officially packed a bag and left town. This one's Greg, you whisper, tapping out another tiny metal spike. Greg's a good one. Your master eyes you warily but says nothing. The pile grows. So do the blisters. Your thumb now has a permanent indent from where the tongs rest. Your forearm muscles twitch randomly. You smell like baked liver and sweat. Your eyes sting from the smoke. And you are, strangely, proud. Because each of these nails matters. Each one will hold something together. A roof. A cart. A coffin. Okay, that last one is dark, but welcome to medieval life. By sunset, you've made over 100. You think. You're not counting anymore. You gather the nails into a bucket lined with straw, and set it aside. The carpenter returns, inspects them with the air of a man who doesn't know how hard this was, and tosses you a coin. Your master catches it. You don't see it again. You wipe your forehead and collapse on the same stump you had lunch on. The air smells like ash and cooling iron. Your ears ring faintly from hammer strikes. You stare into the embers of the forge like they're whispering secrets. You think, maybe, you could have been a farmer. Then you remember what farmers do during winter. You think, maybe, you'll just be a blacksmith. Forever. Or until the plague gets you. You walk home, step by painful step. Your hands are too sore to unclench. Your face is streaked with ash. Someone calls you coalface as you pass. It's not an insult. It's just accurate. You reach home. You sit by the hearth and eat a crust of bread. No stew tonight. No strength to chew. You collapse onto your mattress. A mouse runs across your chest. You ignore it. And just before sleep takes you, you remember. Tomorrow is blade sharpening. Knives. Sickles. And if the local priest shows up again, a ceremonial dagger that definitely doesn't make you nervous at all. You wake up. This is becoming a pattern, isn't it? You'd think after 5 days of forging iron in a poorly ventilated medieval sweatbox your body would just give up and stop waking you. But no. Your eyelids flutter open just before dawn because your back, your knees, and something in your left shoulder blade are all staging a protest. Not the fun kind with signs and songs. The kind with dull, relentless pain. Outside, a rooster screams like it's being murdered. Which it might be. Hard to tell. You rise from your straw-stuffed mattress, crack your neck loudly, and rub your hands, which feel like someone hammered them with, well, a hammer. The blisters are now calluses. The calluses are cracked. Your fingers are more bandaged than skin. But today's not a nail day. That's the good news. The bad news? It's blade day. Sharpening, repairing, reshaping, and possibly trying not to bleed to death while handling 37 varieties of sharp medieval murder utensils. You splash your face with cold water. It slaps you harder than your master ever has. You grab a stale crust of bread for the road. You don't eat it. You just gnaw on it slowly like a stress toy. It's probably older than you. Your boots squelch as you step out the door, and you head to the forge. The fog is thick. Like you might walk into a cow by accident thick. The air smells like damp moss and cow dung, with a faint note of despair. The forge is quiet when you arrive. That's suspicious. Your master is already there, naturally, hunched over the grinding wheel like a troll at a sewing machine. Sparks flicker in the gloom, casting eerie shadows on the soot-caked walls. He doesn't say good morning. He just grunts and gestures to a pile of metal on the bench. You approach. It's a nightmare buffet. Sickles, kitchen knives, pruning hooks, 2 short swords, a side blade, and something that looks like it belongs in a sacrifice ritual. It's got weird engravings and smells faintly of incense. You don't ask questions. You just sharpen. You start with the sickles. Curved blades used by farmers to harvest grain, and by reapers to harvest your soul if you're not careful. You heat the blade slightly, not to shape it, but to soften the old metal. Then it's over to the grindstone. You pump the treadle with your foot, watching the wheel spin faster and faster. Then press the blade gently against it. Sparks fly. The sickle screeches. You try not to flinch. This continues for hours. One after the other. Each blade has its own rhythm, its own edge. Too dull and it's useless. Too sharp and the user will accidentally definger themselves. There's a sweet spot. You have to find it. Every time. About 30 minutes in, your leg starts to cramp from the grindstone pedal. But you keep going, because pausing would mean facing your own thoughts. Nobody wants that. A farmer stops by. He's holding a cleaver and a sheep's head. He doesn't say anything. Just places them on the bench and walks out. You're not sure if it's a commission or a threat. Your master starts working on the ceremonial dagger. You pretend not to watch. But you watch. It's made from better steel than anything else you've touched. Probably imported. The hilt is bone, carved with little skulls. Cute. He files the edge slowly, carefully, whispering something you really hope isn't Latin. You're 90% sure this blade has ended lives. You're also 90% sure it'll be used in a blessing later involving blood and goats. You move on to the kitchen knives. Shorter, simpler, but no less annoying. Most are chipped, A few are bent, and at least one still has dried something on the blade. You hope it's stew. It's probably not. As you grind away, your ears fill with the shriek of metal on stone. It's like a banshee got a day job. The smell of scorched iron fills your nostrils. Your tunic is now dusted with glittering flakes of steel. You are, temporarily, sparkly. A medieval disco ball. You cough once. Taste iron. Perfect. Midday arrives. Lunch is a turnip, again. You bite into it like it wronged your family. Your teeth hate you. You sip water. It's warm. You wonder how it manages to be both slightly metallic and somehow chewy. You stop wondering. You don't want answers. Then it's back to the grind. The scythe blade is the worst. It's nearly as long as your arm and completely rusted on one side. You lay it flat on the bench, examine the edge, and realize whoever last used this thing treated it more like a shovel than a slicing implement. You start grinding, and it takes forever. The edge is pitted. The curve is wrong. The weight distribution is off. You reshape the bevel bit by bit, sparks flying in bursts that light your face like lightning. You lose track of time. Your master walks by and hands you a wet cloth. You wipe your face. It turns black. Cool. The final item on your list is the short sword. A peasant's weapon. It's not fancy. The grip is wrapped in old leather. The blade has a small notch near the tip. It's seen use. Probably not in a glamorous way. Probably more bandit in a trench than noble on a battlefield. You polish it, file the edge, then oil the blade lightly to prevent rust. You wonder who will hold it next. A farmer protecting his goats? A guard with a poor attitude and worse hygiene? You hope it's not the priest. You finish just as the sun begins to dip. The light turns amber. The forge flickers. Everything smells like sweat, smoke, and scorch hope. Your master gives a single nod. Then he holds up a set of tongs. And a rough, rusty, misshapen lump of something that used to be a garden spade. Tomorrow, he says, we fix tools. You nod, too tired to scream. You walk home like a broken scarecrow. Your arms dangle. Your legs shuffle. Your eyelids are begging for retirement. At home, your mattress feels like heaven, or at least the closest you'll get to it with straw poking your ribs. You close your eyes. And just before sleep claims you, you think, please, not another shovel. You wake up. Again. Because clearly, your body hasn't figured out the concept of collapse and don't come back. The sun hasn't even peeked over the horizon yet, but your internal misery clock is already screaming. Your back is stiff, your fingers are locked into a claw, and there's something sticky in your hair. Possibly tree sap. Possibly egg. Possibly bird-related. You don't ask. You just scrape. Today is Tool Day. Oh, Tool Day. The unsung parade of medieval ingenuity and poor design. You roll off the straw mattress, carefully avoiding the part where the mice made a nest, and pull on your tunic, which is now so stiff with soot, sweat, and disappointment that it stands up on its own. You briefly consider if it's developing sentience. You give it a gentle slap and move on. A quick rinse of your face in a basin of water that feels personally offended by your existence, and you're out the door, chewing on half a barley loaf that tastes like regret and sawdust. You're halfway to the forge before you realize it's moldy. You keep chewing anyway. That's just penicillin, medieval edition. By the time you reach the smithy, your master is already banging something with unnecessary aggression. You squint into the smoky interior and see what looks like a mangled rake on the anvil. The teeth are bent like a drunk tried to comb the earth. You sigh, like a mun walking into a very specific type of hell. Your master doesn't look up. He simply nods toward the corner where your new best friends are piled, broken hammers, warped plowshares, axe heads with chips that look suspiciously like someone used them to open barrels sideways, and one shovel blade so bent it resembles a medieval ladle. You take a deep breath. Your lungs regret it. You grab the first victim, a hoe blade, rusted to the point of near abstraction. You give it a test wiggle in the tongs, and the rust flakes off like confetti. You heat it in the forge until it glows the color of a warning, then place it on the anvil and start hammering it flat. The sound is soothing, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. If your heart were made of iron and disappointment, the sparks dance up into your face. One lands on your arm. It sizzles like bacon. You don't flinch. You stop reacting to pain 4 chapters ago. A local farmer strolls in, dragging a wheelbarrow that's more wheel than barrow. Inside are tools in various stages of existential crisis. You know this man. He's rough, smells like onions and hay, and never tips. Got the whole kit for you today, he says, gesturing proudly. Had a bit of a mishap. You look into the wheelbarrow. There are 2 axes with cracked handles, a side blade bent like a smile, a pitchfork that seems to have lost a tooth, and a hammerhead detached from its handle entirely. You stare at him. What did you do? Fight a windmill? He chuckles. You do not. You begin the long process of restoring this carnival of tool trauma. One by one, you heat them, beat them, grind them, and occasionally mutter things under your breath that might be curses or prayers. Your master works beside you, grunting like a symphony of grizzled pigs. Time slips sideways. Hours pass. The forge glows. The air is thick with smoke and the iron tang of labor. You get to the axe heads. You love and hate axe heads. On one hand, they're beautiful when done right. Perfect curves, strong steel, an edge you can shave with. On the other hand, they're heavy, unbalanced, and every village idiot thinks he's a woodsman until his axe splits after 6 strokes. You reheat the first one. Use the hammer to shape the bit, flattening, reshaping, adjusting the bevel. Then over to the grindstone to sharpen the edge. You feel the weight, make sure it balances correctly. Good enough to fell a tree, or a bandit, or your last thread of patience. You lose yourself in the work again. It's like meditation, if meditation involved fire, knives, and third-degree burns. A boy arrives mid-morning, sent from the manor house. He's 12, barefoot, and terrified. Mum says the spade's broke, he mumbles, holding out a long wooden shaft attached to a shattered blade. You examine it. Someone definitely tried to dig through rock. Or a goat. You can't tell. Either way, it's a lost cause. You grunt and toss it into the melt-down and forget pile. Then you take up a new blade from the stack, shape it on the anvil with care, and hammer out a new edge. Precision. Form. A tiny prayer to whatever forge gods haven't given up on you. You slot it into a new shaft, wedge it tight, and hand it back to the boy. Tell her not to dig through dragons next time. He nods solemnly, probably unsure if that's a joke. You go back to the workbench and sip some water. It's lukewarm. Still tastes vaguely of metal. Probably because the cup is metal. Possibly because everything you touch now tastes like iron. Lunch arrives. Your master produces a wooden bowl of something that looks like it was made in a cauldron that once held rats. It's mostly barley, vaguely stew adjacent. You find a twig in it. Possibly intentional. You chew slowly, staring at the grindstone. You wonder, vaguely, what it would be like to be a bard. Just sing about things. Lie for a living. Travel with a lute and no taxes. Then again, you'd probably still end up stabbed with a pitchfork. So maybe not. Afternoon rolls in like a migraine. You're sweating buckets. Your shirt clings to your skin like guilt. Your hands ache from gripping tongs. You drop one of the tools on your foot and nearly reenact a silent scream worthy of an Oscar. Then comes the plowshare. It's enormous. It's rusted. And it's cracked almost clean in half. You stare at it. It stares back. This is the kind of job that requires patience, strength, and at least a small glass of mead. You have none of these. But you try anyway. You heat it slowly, carefully. If you do it wrong, it'll split again. You lay it across the anvil, align the crack, and begin welding with forge weld techniques, layering iron, hammering it back into a unified blade. Sparks fly. The smell is sharp, hot, ancient. By the end of the hour, you've fused it back together. You grind it smooth. Test its strength. It holds. You allow yourself a tiny smile. Your face forgets how to do it, and you look like a mun sneezing with his eyes open. The day finally ends. The light outside has turned to a golden haze. Villagers collect their tools, nodding in gratitude, or at least mild recognition. One even leaves a chunk of cheese. You consider it treasure. Your master grunts approval. You feel a deep, almost tearful joy. You're not crying. It's just forge smoke. Obviously. You walk home. Your back bends. Your legs shuffle. Your hands throb. The birds are singing. You hate them a little. You eat the cheese in one bite. It's salty. Possibly goat. Definitely amazing. You lie down on your straw mattress, fully clothed, still covered in soot and tiny flecks of iron. Your muscles twitch involuntarily. Your eyelids drift downward. You dream of tools. They chase you. You wake up. Again. Yes. We're still doing this. At this point, it feels less like waking and more like respawning into the exact same nightmare on loop. Groundhog Day. But instead of charming jazz music and time-traveling redemption arcs, you get grime, blisters, and people who think sharpening a plowshare is equivalent to witchcraft. The rooster is still alive, somehow. Its vocal cords are going strong, announcing to the universe that the sun exists and so must you. You open your eyes to your ceiling, which is still made of poorly cut beams and spider judgment. One of the spiders has moved closer. He's watching you. You nod in solemn understanding. You stretch. Something pops. You choose to believe it was your back realigning and not your body giving up its final joint in protest. Today is not a blade day. Not a nail day. Not even a tool day. Today is horseshoe day. You sigh not because you're sad, but because horseshoe day is long. Not difficult exactly, at least not in theory, but repetitive in a way that unravels the soul one iron circle at a time. You trudge outside, dodging mud, livestock, and the vague scent of peasant laundry, and make your way to the forge. It's already smoldering. The fire is hungry. Always is. Like it knows your energy is limited and wants to feast on what little you have left. Your master is there. He's in his usual pose, hunched, scowling, and inspecting a pile of iron like it personally offended him. Without looking up, he points a thumb to the corner. There, stacked neatly, or as neatly as peasants manage, is a pile of horse hooves, still attached to horses. Fantastic. You greet the farrier who's brought them. He's cheerful, chipper, and far too enthusiastic about his job. The kind of man who whistles while applying hoof rests. You hate him a little, but he smells like mint and competence, so you let it slide. Got 8 to do today, he says. You nod. 8 horses. 4 hooves each. 32 custom horseshoes. And that's if none of them kick you. The forge begins to growl with heat as you feed it charcoal. You pick up the first bar of iron, slide it into the flames, and begin the long, rhythmic process of transforming a dead lump of metal into a precision-made medieval sneaker. Once the iron glows yellow-orange, right around this would melt your soul temperature, you remove it with tongs and bring it to the anvil. Hammer, hammer, rotate. Hammer, hammer, rotate. You shape it into a smooth U. The farrier trims the hoof. You fit the shoe. Adjustments? Always. Heat it again. Bend it more. Maybe grind down the inner edge. And then, the worst part, the sound of nails going into hoof. Not into flesh, don't worry. But the sound. That hollow, thudding crack that triggers something ancient in the back of your brain that says, this is wrong. The horse doesn't flinch. You do. The smell is worse. Burnt keratin. It's a combination of wet hair, smoldering leather, and forgotten dreams. It clings to your clothes, your skin, your very soul. You will never be rid of it. Hours pass. The rhythm continues. You sweat through your tunic. It fuses to your back like an additional skin. You burn your finger slightly on a hot shoe. Again. You curse silently, because swearing out loud in front of horses apparently makes them nervous. Good to know. By midday, you've done 3 horses. You break for lunch. Today's delicacy is hard cheese, a turnip, and something the baker's boy swears is meat. You do not investigate. The farrier drinks meat from a flask and sings under his breath. You consider pushing him into the forge. Not seriously. Just as a gentle nudge toward humility. Back to work. Horse number 4 has opinions. Big opinions. It tries to kick you twice and steps on your foot once. You do not scream. Instead, you breathe deeply, close your eyes, and briefly astral project to a world where you're a librarian with clean fingernails and no tetanus. Eventually, the shoe fits. You nail it in. Your ears are ringing from the hammer blows. The horse walks off, clomping proudly, as if it forged its own shoes. You wipe your brow. The farrier gives you a thumbs up. You return a slow, wiggering blink. There's still one more horse. This one is large. Draft horse. Massive hooves. The kind of beast that could step on you and make it your problem. You heat new bars of iron, thicker than usual. heavier. You shape each one with extra effort. Your arms are jelly. Your shoulders have gone on strike. Your wrists are just along for the ride at this point. It takes everything you have to finish. But you do. And when the final shoe is nailed in and the horse clomps off into the sunset, probably to trample cabbages, you collapse onto the bench and stare at the forge's glow. The master nods. The farrier claps you on the shoulder and says, "Best batch I've seen this season." You grunt. This is the closest you've come to praise in a year. Your master hands you a cup of water. It's not even warm. It's room temperature, which is perfect. Somehow, you sip slowly, as though it were aged wine. The forge dies down. The light fades. The sky turns the color of old parchment. You walk home with feet that no longer bend properly. A neighbor greets you. You nod vaguely. You're not sure if they were real. You reach your home, open the door, and collapse into your bed without ceremony. You smell like burnt hoof, charcoal, and a hint of existential crisis. You don't care. You are asleep. But right before the darkness takes you, you hear a horse neigh. And you think, not tomorrow. Please. Anything but hooves. You wake up. Again. Because of course you do. It's raining. The kind of slow, greasy drizzle that somehow manages to be both too wet and not wet enough. Everything is damp. Your blanket is damp. Your walls are damp. Your soul is damp. Welcome to the medieval countryside, where weather exists exclusively to punish you for being alive. You roll out of bed like a sack of old potatoes, every muscle screaming in protest. Your joints sound like a carpenter's workshop. Your back feels like someone tried to fold you in half and forgot to unfold you. You sit on the edge of your mattress, which, as always, smells faintly of mildew, goat, and long-standing generational trauma, and stare at the wall for a moment, questioning every decision that led you to blacksmithing. But it's not like you had choices. It's not like a medieval career counselor once asked you, "Hey, do you like fire, pain, and being yelled at by people who don't understand metallurgy?" No, you were born into this. Like an heir to a throne, but instead of a crown, you get blisters and a permanent iron smell in your nostrils. You pull on your tunic. It's still damp. Because everything is still damp. It's clinging to your skin like guilt. You slap your boots against the floor a few times to evict whatever is squatting inside. Something crawls out. You pretend it didn't. You shove your feet in and move on. Today is repairs day, which means everything that could possibly go wrong already has. By someone else. You're just here to pick up the pieces. Literally. You grab a chunk of barley bread on the way out, stale enough to build houses with, and gnaw at it like a man trying to chew through his own regrets. You almost dislocate your jaw. Medieval bread does not care for your dental health. That's fine. You didn't have much of that left anyway. You reach the smithy, and you already know what kind of day it's going to be, because someone's there waiting. He's pacing. He's a farmer. His shirt is soaked, his hat is drooping, and he's holding what appears to be the shattered remains of a wheel hub, some metal brackets, and possibly a curse. "Cart through a wheel," he says. "Need it back before sundown." Of course you do. You take the bundle from him. It's wet. It's muddy. It's heavy. And it smells vaguely of cabbage. He leaves you with a grunt and a promise that he'll be back later. As if you were planning to just stroll into the woods and abandon the wheel out of spite. Which, to be fair, is a tempting thought. You set to work. First, you have to clean everything. Which means scrubbing decades of mud, grime, and mystery gunk off every surface of metal. Your hands go numb. The water is cold. The brushes are worn down to stumps. You question whether soap exists. It does. Just not for you. Once clean, you examine the damage. One of the iron brackets is cracked in 3 places, and the hub's metal rim is warped like someone took a hammer to it in a jealous rage. Which, considering medieval roads, may be true. Every cart journey is like a boss fight against gravity. You set the pieces on the anvil and start heating the bracket. The forge is roaring again, and the moment you step too close you're slapped with a wave of heat strong enough to bake your eyebrows. You already lost the left one 2 weeks ago. You're starting to think they're optional. You draw the metal to the right color, a cheerful, glowing orange, and start hammering. Clang, clang, clang. The sound is constant, echoing in your skull like a choir of angry bells. The rain drips down from the edges of the thatched roof. Steam rises from the forge and from your arms, which are already soaked through. You look like you're slowly boiling. Because you are. A neighbor pokes his head in mid-morning. He's holding what looks like half of a gate hinge and all of his dignity. "Got this off the barn," he says. "Something broke it. Might have been the cow. Or the wind. Or possibly me." You take it without replying. He adds, "Oh, and can you sharpen this?" and hands you a kitchen knife that looks like it was used to cut stones. You nod. Because that's what today is, an endless parade of broken things and bad decisions. You fix the gate hinge. Weld it. Grind it. Make it new, even though it will probably break again next week because the neighbor insists on slamming it like a Viking raider announcing his arrival. The knife? You take it to the whetstone and give it a proper edge. It takes forever. It fights back. It's stubborn. Like every tool made before the 15th century. You glance at the bracket you were originally working on and realize it's cooling. Too quickly. Back into the forge it goes. You don't speak. You just silently suffer. Like a hero in a really low-budget epic. Except instead of dragons, your enemy is rust. And instead of a sword, you wield a hammer that's slowly turning your elbow into mush. By midday, you fix the bracket, reshape the hub rim, and reforge the axle pin. You feel nothing but hollow triumph. It's like winning a competition where the prize is more work. You break for lunch. Rain still falls. You sit under a small awning, eating something warm and vaguely stew-like from a shared pot. It contains vegetables, possibly, and bits of something you choose to believe is meat. No questions. No eye contact. Just chewing. A traveling merchant appears in the afternoon. He's soaked through and holding a bent lantern hook. "You fix iron?" he asks. You want to respond, "No, I'm actually just a decorative fireplace enthusiast," but instead you nod, take the hook, and inspect the damage. It's nothing serious. A 15-minute fix. But you already know he's going to haggle. And he does. He offers 2 copper coins and a smile. You accept because dignity isn't a recognized currency here. The rain begins to ease. Just enough to turn the mud into paste. Another farmer shows up with a broken chain. A butcher drops off a cleaver that's gone blunt. A child brings a horseshoe he found in the forest and asks if you can make it into a crown for his cat. You almost say no. But then you realize this might be the most wholesome request you've had in a month. You spend 10 minutes reshaping it into a tiny iron tiara. The child runs off grinning. The cat will probably hate it. Back to the forge. Back to the fire. Back to the sweat, the grime, the aching spine, and the sound of metal screaming under your hammer. You don't talk. You don't smile. You don't dream. You work. And by the end of the day, as the light fades and the villagers come back to collect their things, you stand by the door of the forge like a guardian statue, blackened by soot, glowing faintly with heat, and vaguely steaming. The cart owner returns. He picks up the reassembled wheel and nods. "Looks good," he says, as though you didn't just spend 4 hours reconstructing his entire transportation system from scratch. He tosses you a coin. It bounces. You bend to pick it up. Your spine makes a sound. You return home in silence. Your clothes cling to your skin. Your feet are prunes. You strip off your tunic and drop it onto a stool. The stool sighs. Possibly metaphorically. Possibly literally. You're too tired to know. You climb into bed. The mattress is wet. You lie there anyway. Because at this point, comfort is a myth. Warmth is a memory. And sleep? Sleep is the only payment you'll ever truly receive. And you accept it. You wake up. Except you don't really. You sort of drift upward from the black hole of medieval exhaustion like a reluctant ghost, clinging to the last threads of unconsciousness. Your body is technically upright. Your soul is still curled in the corner, muttering about horseshoes and the smell of singed hoof. You sit up. It's freezing. The kind of cold that doesn't just greet you. It slaps you, robs you, and writes a passive-aggressive note about your life choices in the frost on your window. The fire in your hearth has long since gone out. Your blanket is about as effective as a wet napkin. And your boots, still by the door, have frozen into the exact shape of your shame. You sigh. Not dramatically. That would waste energy. Just a slow, rattling exhale that fogs the air in front of your face. Your breath is visible. like a reminder from the universe that your lungs are functioning, whether you like it or not. You step onto the dirt floor. It's not just cold, it's hungry. It steals the warmth from your soles like a medieval tax collector. Your toes curl instinctively, but it's too late. The frost has already claimed them. You layer up, if you can call it that. One tunic, one cloak, one desperate prayer that the forge will be hot enough today to keep you alive. You wrap a scarf around your neck that smells faintly of onions. You don't own a scarf, so it might actually be a shirt. You don't care. Today is a tools day, which sounds deceptively simple. It is not. Tools mean farmers have realized that winter is coming, not in the Game of Thrones way, but in the all my stuff is rusted and broken and the field looks like sadness way, and now they need you to fix it. You walk to the smithy through a fine crust of snow and mud. The sky is a shade of gray that implies emotional instability. There's no sun, just a dull, oppressive dome above your head, like a wet sponge at an existential crisis. At the forge, your master is already working. Because of course he is. He doesn't feel cold anymore. He is cold. The mud has the emotional warmth of a door hinge and the physical resilience of a granite statue. You say good morning. He grunts. That's the full extent of your social interaction for the next 6 hours. The forge hasn't been lit yet. You get to work, feeding it kindling, charcoal, and prayers. The first spark catches, and soon the fire starts to growl. You blow into the bellows. The flames roar like a dragon who just remembered it pays rent in your ribs. Slowly, the forge awakens. And so do you. The first tool of the day is a plow blade, cracked, rusted, and bent. It looks like someone tried to harvest rocks with it. You glance at the farmer who brought it. He shrugs like it's your problem now. And it is. You heat the blade. You hammer out the cracks. You reforge the edge. You spend the better part of an hour trying to convince the iron to behave, which is ironic because iron has the personality of a toddler with a superiority complex. It bends when it feels like it. It cools too fast. It hisses when you quench it, like it's judging your every move. You finish the blade, hand it back to the farmer, and immediately receive the second request, a hoe. Bent. Rusted. Almost useless. You want to say, just buy a new one, but this is medieval Europe, and disposable income is a concept that only exists for kings and very fortunate chickens. You repeat the process. Heat. Hammer. Grind. Quench. Next comes a scythe. Then a rake. Then another hoe, somehow in worse condition than the first. One item at a time, the villagers line up to hand you their broken tools and watch you do your slow metal wizardry. By midday, the forge is crackling like a campfire on caffeine. Your face is coated in soot. Your arms ache in that dull, permanent way that suggests long-term damage. You stop for a break and eat something solid enough to be used as a weapon. It might be bread. It might be last week's bread. The difference is mostly academic. You sip water from a wooden cup that's starting to splinter. Your lips catch a sliver. You don't care. You've accepted that medieval hydration comes with a side of tetanus. A nobleman rides by in the distance. His horse is shiny. His cloak is velvet. He does not make eye contact. You wonder what it's like to live that life, to wear real boots and sleep indoors without sharing your bed with 6 spiders and a rat named Harold. But then he drops something. A spur. It clinks against the stones and rolls near your forge. He doesn't notice. You pick it up. Examine it. Fine work. Silver inlay. Lightly engraved. You could probably sell it. You hand it back anyway. He doesn't thank you. He just rides off, like medieval Batman, if Batman was deeply entitled and allergic to gratitude. Back to work. A shepherd arrives with a set of broken shears. You fix them. A carpenter brings a gouge that's lost its bite. You sharpen it. A brewer needs a new iron hoop for a barrel. You make it. And somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, when your brain is a melting lump of hammer rhythms and smoke, someone hands you a broken key. It's tiny, delicate. You have no idea what it's for. They won't tell you. You forge it anyway. Because you're not just a blacksmith anymore. You're a therapist for metal, a surgeon for tools, and apparently the town locksmith now. You finish the day with a blister on your thumb, a new callus on your palm, and a soot mark on your face that makes you look like you lost a fight with a chimney. You walk home. The wind bites. The clouds spit sleet. You squint through it all and make it to your door, where you collapse against a frame like a man who's just climbed a mountain made entirely of regrets. Inside, it's dark. You light a candle. You stare at the flame. You think, briefly, about quitting. But then you realize you don't actually know how to do anything else. You lie down. The blanket barely covers you. Your legs stick out like leftover firewood. And still, you sleep. Because today was Tool's Day. And tomorrow? Tomorrow is Sore Day. You groan. Because that means nobles. And they're so much worse than farmers.